I think we can start then. Please allow Mr. Raj when he comes in, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So, good evening, everybody. On behalf of the Center for the Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, Impact and Policy Research Institute, and the Department of Social Work, Bharathidasan University, I, Simi Mehta, welcome you all to the very important web policy talk on rethinking the city governance amid COVID-19 with special reference to the migrant labor crisis. All of us have been a testimony to the horrific sights of the plight of millions of migrant workers who suddenly became stranded after the overnight announcement of the nationwide lockdown, which was instituted because of the spread of COVID-19. So most of these poor migrants are daily wage workers who were suddenly out of work as businesses and establishments shut in the absence of money, jobs, and also bereft of any food, savings, or shelter in the large cities. They became desperate to reach to their villages and hometowns. However, the police brutality, the spraying of toxic bleach disinfectants on them, trekking several hundreds of miles with their children with heavy luggage over the past few months has unfolded a sort of a humanitarian crisis. The too little, too late efforts by the union and state governments have compounded to the troubles and have laid bare the plight of India's millions of internal migrants. So on this note, today we have all gathered here to deliberate upon how city governance system could have come to the rescue in such times of despair, especially when India is among the top 4 countries with highest positive cases of COVID-19 infected patients, unfortunately. So on this note, good evening, a very good evening to all of you. And I would now request the permission of the chair, Professor Shipra Maitra, to permit me to open the discussion by the introduction of panelists. Ma'am?
Please. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. So I would just like to introduce to you all the chairperson for today's web policy talk, Professor Shipra Maitra. Professor Maitra holds a PhD in economics from JNU, New Delhi. She's a specialist in urban finance and has a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. She holds the position of Delhi Chair Professor at the Institute of Human Development and is a member of the 4th Municipal Valuation Committee of the Government of NCT of Delhi. Previously, she was also the Dean of Social Sciences at MIT University, Noida. She was also a senior fellow at the Human Settlement Management Institute, which is called HSMI as an acronym, HUDCO. Madam has also been a strong pillar of support as a mentor to Impact and Policy Research Institute since its inception. Professor Maitra is well known for her command over soft skills, e-learning, lecturing, organizational development, and instructional design, and is the author of numerous books and research publications. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation to chair today's webinar. It gives me immense delight to introduce to you the panelists for today. Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay is a PhD in economics and is a senior fellow at IMPRI. He coordinates the Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at IMPRI, under the auspices of which we are holding today's web policy talk. Dr. Chattopadhyay is an associate professor of economics at the Visva Bharati University, Santiniketan, West Bengal. His research interests include decentralization, urban governance, urban finance, urban politics, and policy participatory development, and has numerous national and international publications to his name. We have with us Ms. Bharathy Jayaprakash, who is a qualified chartered accountant and cost accountant. Currently, she is the Chief Financial Controller of Esyasoft Technologies Private Limited. She has a passion and over 2 decades of experience in urban finance, financing of urban local bodies, accounting, valuation, strategic management, and valuation and equity financing. And she played a pivotal role in getting the 198 urban local bodies financials audited in Rajasthan. She has a passion for sustainability and has been an active citizen and has rejuvenated a lake with a volunteer group. She is a volunteer with the Citizens for Bengaluru movement. She has authored numerous articles and 2 books, one of which is on strategic financial management, published by the Oxford University Press, and has sold more than 4,000 copies. We have with us Mr. Raj Cherubal, who is the CEO of Chennai Smart City Limited. Formerly, he was the Director Projects for Chennai Smart City Connect, a platform for industry and civic organizations, which envisions vibrant Indian cities for delivering world-class quality of life, infrastructure, and services. As an administrator, he is interested in improving urban governance and quality of life and has worked on sustainable transportation, urban planning, pedestrianization, bus rapid system or the BRT, integrated multimodal public transportation, solid waste management, restoration of urban water bodies, sustainable financing of urban infrastructure, etc. He has been very active to promote decentralization and urban good governance. He holds 2 master's degrees in physics and in nuclear engineering from Universities of Louisville and University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, respectively. And we have with us Professor Irudaya Rajan, who holds a PhD in demography from the International Institute for Population Sciences, Mumbai. He is currently a professor at the Center for Development Studies in Kerala. He has several research publications and books to his credit, and his areas of specialization are diverse, and it includes population and development, economics of aging, gender and development, international migration, economic costs and social costs, database issues, population censuses, etc. Professor Rajan has also held the position of Chair Professor, Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs, Research Unit on International Migration, and has coordinated 6 major migration surveys in Kerala. I am very delighted to welcome the chair and all the panelists for the day. Thank you very much. And I wish and I hope we have a very fruitful discussion today. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am. Professor Shipra. Ma'am, your mic is muted.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Simi, for your kind words for me. And I am very delighted to be part of this August participation, this very renowned panelist, and it is going to be a very fruitful session. So Simi has already introduced the distinguished speaker who are going to provide very, very valuable input to handle the unprecedented crisis taking heavy toll of health and economy. Now, I have to, in the beginning, I have to do a very unpleasant task of restricting the panelists to the time. So what I will do is that I will request each of the panelists to have to 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, I will please give you a reminder to wind up in 1 or 2 minutes, because we know it's a strictly 1 hour slot. So just excuse me for doing this unpleasant task, because I know that the discussions are now so valuable that we also would not like to stop, but we have to. So with this thing, and what I propose, after each panelist presentation, we will take all the questions and answers together. So after the presentations are there, we will request a panelist to answer them. And then if I have time, then I may give certain observations or so. So this is how it is planned. So with this plan, without wasting further time, I request Dr. Shoumodip Chattopadhyay to share his thoughts with us. Dr. Shomodip Chattopadhyay.
So, yeah. So, am I audible? Well, namaskar and good evening to all. And thank you, Professor Maitra, for sharing this session. And thank you, Simi, for a kind introduction and words and all these things. And since Professor Maitra has already just mentioned a very strict time schedule, so let me just quickly go through my presentation today. And what today, mainly I'll focus on the city governance part. Now, as we all know that the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrates how vulnerable we really are and highlights the conditions responsible for spread of this contagious diseases. And cities in India are particularly affected, especially the population living in slums and peri-urban areas. And also the health experts, they have already opined that the citizens, they need to think in terms of living with this virus for at least 2 more years. And in the unlocking phase, the outbreaks will potentially spread in many other areas. So public debates and discussions are increasingly addressing this urgent need to rethink the way we organize our cities, design economic activities, and set up the decision-making processes at different scales. And I think a closer look at those discourses reveals 3 important issues which are crucial to the national and city governments as they launch the recovery effects and plan for the new normal. First, the places most affected are places with poor, overcrowded housing, lacking infrastructural services, especially the water and sanitation, and with minimal open spaces such as the informal settlements. Second, the place who are worst hit, the people who are worst hit are the poor and vulnerable. Third, it is extremely crucial, therefore, to prioritize the policies to confront this spatial, social, and economic exclusion with the aim of leaving no one behind. So, particularly the locally led and adapted responses that take into account the diversity and complexity of urban settings are key to mitigate the worst of this outbreak. So I argue here that the empowerment of city governments, political, functional, and financial, when seen from this perspective, is no longer a matter of choice. Rather, it is a necessity. And the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, it actually offers constitutional recognition to the city governments by devolution of power and functions. But even after 25 years of 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, India has witnessed a kind of patchy progress in the implementation of this act. Just let me first focus on the political empowerment part. The political empowerment is weakened by the infrequent election of the urban local bodies. Many states have not followed the mandatory provision of holding regular elections. Even the mayor or chairperson's position is a deficit on many grounds. Most states in India, they rest the executive authority of the local governments on the commissioner, who is a state appointee. The local body has very little authority over the functioning of the commissioner, and the democratically elected mayors and the city councillor have very little say in the management of the cities, let alone on emergencies like COVID-19 at the city level. And even the functional domain is also unclear. The 12th schedule of the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act clearly mandates the devolution of 18 functions, which include water supply, sanitation, solid waste management, public health, and slum improvement to the city governments. I had a look at the report by Proja, a leading non-partisan organization. Actually, it published a report on 21 major cities in January 2020. And this report reveals that not a single city government among those 21 major cities has control over all 18 functions. In fact, out of those 21 cities, 9 cities currently experience the involvement of multiple agencies in more than 10 functions. In fact, the constitutional provisions only enable state legislature to assign function by law. But it is only up to the states to assign or not assign functions to the urban local bodies. So the typical state government response is to create the pedestrian agencies or the special purpose vehicles to perform some of the specified municipal functions, including land use planning and urban development. And this has resulted in considerable overlapping between their functions and those of these newly empowered urban local bodies. Even if we see the smart city guidelines state that the rights and obligation of the local municipality to be transferred to the special purpose vehicles, but they do not specify the exact terms of the relationship and hierarchy between those SPV and the municipality. So such ambiguities often contribute to the poor services, and these problems become far more severe in case of managing and preventing potential outbreak like this COVID-19. And it is true that the urban local bodies have limited capacities because majority of the city governments are understaffed. So it is pragmatic to allow the development authorities or the special purpose vehicles to work on this large urban perspective. But what I argue is that should be in consonance with, not in exclusion of elected city governments. It is important to identify the functions for which ULBs are solely responsible, and also to identify the functions for which municipalities need to partner with other agencies. And in such cases, there should be clear-cut division and synchronization of planning, financing, and implementation among the partnering agencies. And also, let me now focus on the participatory avenues which are available at the city level, because as we all know that to combat with COVID-19, we need place-based solution. It requires engagement of local residents with the city governments. And there are certain constitutional provisions for ward committee as deliberative body at the municipal level to ensure citizens' participation in governance matters. But what we found that in many states, ward committees have not been formed. In some states, for example, in West Bengal, ward committees are mandated for each ward in each municipality, and they are entrusted with certain key functions which have very crucial implications for management of COVID-19 situation. And personally, I examined.
Please, sorry to interrupt. 2 minutes more.
Okay. So I examined the participatory practices of the ward committee, and what I found that the people were largely ignorant about the existence, the constitutional status, and the rules and activities of the ward committee, and the AGM of the ward committee was not being held regularly. So this is a very bizarre situation kind of thing. And also later on, we had the community participation law, which mandates the constitution of area sabha. But again, some states have made provisions for these area sabhas, but we have not heard any proactive actions at the area sabha level in any states of the India. And lastly, let me just quickly come to the financial part, because the city government in India have very weak financial health, which has been a matter of concern over the years, especially for the smaller cities. Again, the Constitution of India does not spell out specifically the sources from which the municipalities could gather revenues. The assignment of functions is completely left to the discretion of the state governments. ULB can levy and collect only those taxes that are specified by the state government. And in fact, what we are seeing is that even if we consider the expenditure part, cities tend to spend more on per capita basis on general administration and salaries and wages. So very little funds are left for development purposes, and this actually constrains the urban local bodies' ability to provide basic services which are crucial for fighting against the COVID-19. Essentially, this is a sort of vicious circle where paucity of resources causes poor service delivery, leading to poor revenue generation. And so, but we need to acknowledge that no schemes or strategy can ever serve as a substitute to getting the basics right. Urban local bodies will have to find ways to expand their revenue, to expand their revenue streams. I'll come to the later, because there are various alternatives for improving the financial health of the urban local bodies. So if some questions come, we will discuss later on. But what I'm trying to argue is that the current global pandemic offers some acute warnings and delivers several fundamental messages to us to rethink on city governments. And this pandemic provides a rare opportunity for an earnest collaboration with urban local governments. So genuinely empowering cities in respect of 3 Fs, functions, funds, and functionaries, has to be a part of any outbreak management master plan. What I believe is that the financially empowered city governments with clear functional domain and adequate institutional capacity can respond rapidly and quickly to contain the spread of COVID-19. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sticking to the time so that you don't encroach upon the next panelist presentation. That is, I request Bharathy Jayaprakash to make her presentation. And as I said that we are not going to comment anything or express any opinion. Just let the panelists present their share their thoughts first. Then we will do the discussion. Go for the discussion. Yeah, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Maitra and Dr. Chattopadhyay covered everything so well. I think I will not get into the act and per se, but probably what I would like to, I'll keep it short and from the ground level of working, what I would like to state in today's this rethinking of, the city governance is probably there are three aspects that I would like to focus on. One, as he rightly said, ward sabha, ward committees are not being formed. But in Bangalore, if you see, we have ward committees, we have ward level participation. But again, transparency and accountability seems to be a big issue. So we don't know the details. And second, the main thing is basically we need to have, for example, all the online classes have started. Teachers have geared up to, from a non-computer background, they have geared up to learning the uh, technology, and they are giving classes. Kids are getting coaching through the Zoom. So probably I think the ward sabhas or ward the corporator level or at a ward level, information should be disseminated with Zoom calls or WhatsApp groups. Now most of the maids, the guards, the security, the migrant laborers, everyone has a WhatsApp. In fact, while I was helping the migrant laborers, everyone had a phone pay, Google Pay, everything. So we transferred a good amount of money to all of them by pulling in and then calling them and checking and everything. So I think we have to use technology and give more information. The third thing I think I would focus on is probably the media. The media should have dedicated a channel and 2 pages probably just to tell you what's happening at your local level rather than focusing on what's happening in so for example, I'm from Karnataka, I am from Bangalore, I would like to know what's happening in Karnataka. So there was a classic example which I would like to give. The Dharwad DC had done a very good job of accommodating, getting the Khadi Udyog to stitch masks for the migrant workers and the standard people. And then they coordinated and ensured that all the people get back to their places with the buses. So I think at the local government level, we need a lot of participation. And lastly, but not, to be forgotten, the resident workers. While we're all focusing on the migrant workers, we have to focus on the resident workers. So what we were doing in Bangalore, we have a Mask It Bangalore campaign where we are distributing masks freely. So now what we did is instead of we stitching it at home and doing things, we got a local tailor to get it done. So while discussing the issue with him, it was a very pitiable state. He has 60 machines, he has factory, he has 60 tailors, and he's unable to bear the fixed cost. I mean, so there are orders which have come down. So what we did is, okay, fine, let's give everything 10 rupees per mask. Stitching charges is not a big deal. If I'm donating 100 masks, it's just 1,000 rupees for me, which probably we can afford. So we are trying to help people through technology and social media platform and connectivity. So to summarize this, I think what we should focus is on ward committees, corporators, or your ward level governance, then probably the media, and also psychological counseling of all these residents to say that, okay, fine, you're all safe, there is nothing, we can definitely control it, and also distribution. So using technology, I think we can do wonders.
Thank you very much. It is really, you set an example of how to do the time management. And this is really that you are a financial expert, so you know how to manage the resources, including whatever resources is there. That is the proof that you have done.
Thanks for your kind words. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. Thanks very much. Now, we all know about this smart city mission, the government's flagship urban program. Now, it is actually trying to make cities both competitive. I think has pandemic during this crisis. So we are very eager to learn from Mr. Raj Cherubal. He is here. How he is handling the challenge specifically.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'll also keep it short. I think with respect to the title says, changing governance and so on. I think the first speaker pretty much spoke for all of us. I suspect that no matter what the mission, whichever government starts any mission, call it smart city, green city, and so on, I think in the long run there, and even in the medium term for that matter, there is no substitute for decentralization. And I say this, I've been saying this for almost 10, 15 years, even as part of my earlier NGO career. All the cities in the world that we know, whether it's Hong Kong or London, Paris, and so on, where people look at it and saying, okay, that's an advanced city where people have better quality of life. I think all those cities probably grew from the ground up. They made mistakes, I'm sure. They had mayors and councillors and public participation of various sort. They've made plenty of mistakes. They learned from it. And that's the only way, the realistic way to build capacity of the city. And I think COVID also there's another danger in this whole COVID and pandemic where we are locked down for 3 months. So I think we are imagining, many people I talk to, imagine they speak as if there's a completely different reality out there. So I always put people in their perspective. So I ask people to imagine if this is December 2019, before most of us heard something called a COVID and so on. Imagine the long list of problems we used to discuss in similar seminars, right? Potholes, poverty, slums, unhygienic conditions, garbage on the road, etc., etc. Whether we put it in terms of 74th Amendment or reality you see on the street, none of those things have changed, right? None of our cities, wherever we are, whether it's Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, or smaller cities, not a single thing has changed because the fundamentals of whether you deal with a pothole on a regular basis or mosquitoes or garbage or whatever it may be, it has to do with the capacity of the city. And I'll conclude by, in a nutshell, there is no substitute for decentralization. And what has happened, I think, is that with liberalization, and I'm very happy it happened, at least the decentralization towards the state happened. So states today compete with each other for all kinds of things. Chief ministers go and try to get investments and so on. Unfortunately, that decentralization has stopped at the state level, which means the cities are still dependent, as the first speaker said, completely on center and state. And when it comes to public, you and I, we are interested in actually quality of life on the road. So whether, just as an example, a traffic problem, most of the things that is required to change traffic problem into, let's say, amazing public transport, reducing pollution, congestion charges, parking management, etc. Everything, pretty much everything today depends on state and central government, not only financial support, but even the basic OKs, right? So no matter what we do, unless we decentralize, there's no solution in the long run. But on a little more optimistic note, I would say that the Smart City mission, I was also skeptical in 2016 and all before I got this job. I was pretty skeptical. I figured that just another scheme. But if you, at least in Tamil Nadu, the way Smart City has been set up is that it is an SPV under the municipal corporation. It's not parallel government. It is not about municipality handing over power to the SPV, which would be very impractical and also very unnecessary. I mean, imagine somebody like me going and hiring 10,000 people and trying to do what the Greater Chennai Corporation has been doing for decades. Right? It's a pretty not impossible concept and not necessary. More important than it's not necessary. The way it's been set up in Chennai is that it is first of all a financing agency, but also my interpretation is that what we have tried to do is that it is a planning agency. See, this is some, let me get technocratic because the first speaker dealt with the politics of it, the 74th Amendment of it. He covered all those pieces. Technocratically speaking, look at London or Paris and so on. There are always agencies at the city level that ends up helping not only these Corporation of Chennai or a bus company or a train company, but a layer on top that is able to do common things. And one of the things that is seriously missing, and this has to do with capacity, is that most agencies, even if they are good or even if they are half-baked, they end up doing things on their own. This is one of the pet peeves I'm sure most Indians have, that the right hand does something, the left hand department does something completely different, and so on and so forth. And these are structural problems. This is not like bureaucrats are bad or people are bad. It's just a structural problem. And as an example, the Transport for London of London or Land Transport Authority of Singapore, they don't run the bus, they don't fix the roads, but they are actually sitting on top of these agencies and saying, look, there are common plans, common layers of plan a city needs, whether it's a water plan, mosquito plan, dog plan, cat plan, whatever it is, as part of the master plan. And here, problem is Indian cities, we first of all probably don't have a master plan. But even if we have a master plan, it's like looking from the moon and saying our city is going to be amazing and it's going to be amazing in another few years. That's not a plan. What in the end, what you need is the plans to distill down in layers to say, okay, where will that particular tree sit? It cannot be a random positioning of a tree or a random positioning of the lamppost, because everything is connected. When you lay a road, somebody cuts up the road because somebody else wasn't told that, you need to create infrastructure to put pipes and water so that you don't cut the road, and so on and so forth. Since the time is short, I will quicken. Those layers of agencies like Transport for London, etc., are completely missing. So what happens is that you take a simple example of congestion. The advanced city would have immediately put more buses, more metro rails, intermodal integration, and to talk about financing, they would have said, okay, instead of taxing public or raising the fares on the bus, let's do more value capture methods of raising funds and so on. In India, what happens is that the road is owned by the highway or the corporation, which means the only thing a city is able to do is fly over. And this is true in water, this is true in every other subject. So I'm just talking about transport because it's obvious to everybody. Everybody faces traffic in the road. So our favorite topic is flyover because that's the simplest and the worst thing we can do, and that's the only thing we're able to do. The more sophisticated approach of coordinating with bus, metro rail, integration, common ticketing, and integrating it with the parking management system, etc., all that is too complicated for us. So not only do we need to decentralize, I don't think there's anybody who's going to say don't do it. We need to be able to build capacity, and smart city, I would argue, is one such attempt. If you look at the ease of living index of smart city, it is all about quality of life. It is all about walking, cycling, and so on. And the idea is that at least in a place called ABD, area-based development, try something sophisticated with public participation, so which we can't change the city overnight. So can we take a set of very not so silly projects, but actually serious projects, and implement it, learn from each other. And that's pretty much what we have done. We have learned from Bangalore, we have learned from Pune, and so on. Because the state of affairs is so bad in our country that we have to start somewhere. We cannot we cannot be in seminar mode. And being an ex-NGO person, it gets very frustrating for me to be in a seminar mode always. We have to start implementing, learning, succeeding, failing, and so on.
Sorry,
and so
sir,
forth.
I have to interrupt you.
Yes, I'm done. So
1 minute, please.
Decentralization, yes, but also we don't have the luxury of 50 or 100 years to wait and say we will do it someday with great planning. We have to start somewhere. That's how other cities have started. And I think smart city is one vehicle. There are, I'm sure, many ways of doing this. But smart city, at least in Chennai, we've been able to, I think, develop, implement some pretty sophisticated projects which are part of a larger strategy. Pedestrian plaza, cycle sharing, fixing water bodies, about 200 water bodies are getting restored, so on and so forth. These are critical strategic pieces of a larger picture. And the good news, and the last point I'll make, is that these critical pieces are now being replicated and scaled across the city. And that's exactly what you want. You want the public to start asking for these good projects. That's exactly what is happening. So the replication and scaling is in the process right now. And we have a long way to go. I don't want to make it sound like we've solved all the problems. We have a very long way to go. So we must decentralize short-term, long-term, medium-term, but we must start building our city's capacity right away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I request Professor Rajan to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. I want to thank Dr. Simi for putting me in this panel, though I don't really look at cities anyway. And I think I want to make a few points within the time given to me. One is that I think cities have failed the migrants. I think this is something we should look at it seriously on this particular period, because it created an open bias between poor and middle class. I think middle class have really made poor more vulnerable in the name of what is called lockdown. Lockdown affected whom? It is only the migrants, because people like me, I can work at home and get my salary. But the migrants, they have to move out of the place. You have stopped their mobility. When the Prime Minister said, don't move, that means he stopped the migration. But then these people can make money only by moving. So there is a class dimension we should look at it. Basically, the middle class have shown their face against the poor in the name of lockdown 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. The second point I also want to make it in the situation is that this current crisis also shown the ugly base of the employers. Because when Kerala government is feeding 500,000 migrant workers, I was asking the Kerala government, where are these migrants yesterday? They were working for somebody. So the employers have ditched them. Please go out. So it is shown the, the bad side of the employers. I think this is something we should look at it very carefully. I think, we have failed as citizens to protect our migrants because the migrants build the city. I can't imagine Chennai or Mumbai or what is called Bombay without migration. The another point I would like to make, something is very important, is that we have failed to recognize their existence. Something is very serious about that, because you are not recognized. Because lockdown 1.0, when you opened up, when you locked down, you are given 4 hours to move the migrants from cities. Where are we talking about? Because you would have given at least 1 week for the migrants to move at the lockdown period 1.0. The trains which you are giving, the flights which you are giving, you would have given them 1 more week. In lockdown 1.0, migrants would have been gone home. So what you did, you asked them to sit there. At the time, the coronavirus was only 500 in this country. And Kerala was leading with #1. Nobody wanted to come to Kerala at the time because we were the #1 in the country in March 24. And today, we are 20th rank. And you know that now you are migrating the people when the corona is, we are the 4th rank globally. That means we have failed to recognize their existence. I think this is something very, very important. And even you look at the policies, what we are talking about. When the Prime Minister announces 20 lakh crore, not even a single word about migrants. After the 5-day discussion by Finance Minister, there was one small package for migrants, which is the 5 kg rice. Otherwise, they're all talking something about one country, one card. It has nothing for the migrants today who are running. You have to give them something basic, what is called the food security, health security, and cash transfer. And nobody is giving money to them. Supreme Court told them, please ask them to come travel by free train ticket, free food, and free what is called the water. But what about the money? Please remember, the migrants were sitting in the city lockdown. They were not on strikes. You forced them to sit there. They lost their job and they lost their earnings. And this is the first time in the history migrants are going back from cities without money. They are going with empty hands. So you have to give them something in the empty hands. You cannot just talk too much. Smart city, these things, 20 crore, self-reliant. How can be self-reliant? And they will go and commit suicide. We were talking about farmer suicide for several years. I have already seen people are committing suicide. Migrants going back to the states back. They are going to the villages. They have nothing. And they also have a stigma. He is coming from Chennai. He is coming carrying COVID. So you have made him stigmatized, the name of lockdown, and he is coming back without money. I think this is a very serious failure on the part of everyone. That's why when you talk about smart cities, we think we are the smart people, migrants are unsmart. They will build the city, then they will leave the city. I think the migrants have shown that they are also smart by coming out, walking the whole road. I think they have shown we are also smart, not only the people who talk about smart cities. And that is something very important. And look at that. After the lockdown 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, only yesterday we had some word, migrants will be given some jobs at some districts. And tomorrow it will be announced. That means they are talking about employment opportunity for the rural areas right now. Where were these people? I think we have failed in building the rural India. You are building cities. What is smart city? Why do we need smart cities? Why do we need? We can't manage one city, Mumbai, man. Why do you need 100 smart cities? I think we should ask question back. Do we need smart cities? And the epidemic has shown we don't need. You can't provide them clean water. You are telling wash your hand. There is no water. Keep distance. They cannot keep distance. And you are seeing how the epidemic is growing. I think we have failed them. And finally, I want to close it, is that everybody now talking about migrants. Are they come back? Why should they come? You treated them so badly. You want them to come back and work as slaves? No. I think migrants has to teach lesson to the city people. You have sent us out. You manage your city. I think the migrants will teach a lesson to them. And second thing is that state like Kerala, we are sitting here. Not many people want to go. I talked to many migrants. Sir, why should we go? Our employer protected me, given me stay, given me food, and given me salaries. We have come here to earn money. We have not come here to get the free ticket and go. We are not beggars. Migrants are not beggars. Lockdown made them to beg for food, for water. They are fighting war. They are not fighting war between India and China. They are fighting war against poverty, against malnutrition, against unemployment in the village. They are the heroes. They are the heroes for their families. And the lockdown and COVID made them zeros. Zeros. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Till now, I find 3 questions, 2 on migration and 1 on the smart city. The smart city, the question is that what are the policy measures to deal with smart governance and smart mobility? So I think Mr. Cherubal have a very short time, because this is a big question, that measures to deal with smart governance and smart mobility. So if you can please address that in short.
No, each city has its own, is supposed to come up with its own plan, right, from day one. And unlike what the earlier speaker is saying, migration is here to stay. Okay, people are going to come to cities. Chennai is going to become a megalopolis. Bangalore will become a megalopolis, etc., etc. It's not history of mankind is about migration to city. We are not going to be changing that anytime soon. So it is in our interest. Call it smart city, call it green city, call it whatever you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Point is, our cities are in bad shape. We need to build the cities and make it better. This is what other cities have done. We are now the first city on earth to go from bad to worse or worse to good and so on and so forth. To answer the point that this person is raising, the point is each city in 2015-16 had to come up with its own set of projects to be done. And if you read the Smart City Mission guidelines, the city should now take over charge and start raising its own funds, coming up with its own projects. So for example, in terms of traffic and transport, the question was asking, Chennai, because of the success of our various projects, is now engaging with various funding agencies and looking at local funding in terms of value capture and various mechanisms to do hundreds of kilometers of public space, cycle tracks, walking trails, hopefully more electric buses to combat global warming and so on. So whatever an advanced city would have done in terms of better living conditions in the area of transport is being taken up by Chennai. Bhubaneswar may do something else, Pune may do something else. But the point is, each city now has to start building its capacity to do all the things that we are supposed to do. And it's an open-ended project. It's not like you do 5 projects and declare ourselves wonderful or smart. We have a long way to go. But we have to build those capacities. The first speaker pointed out, we are still dependent on everybody else for financing. From that all the way to planning, we don't have those capacities. Whether it's migrant, whether it's transport, no matter what topic you take, cities don't have those capacities. Unless we build it, we'll end up talking like this in seminars for the next 100 years. So the smart city and other missions, for that matter, is the first step towards building that capacity. And in terms of traffic, it's basically do all the good things, especially keeping climate change in mind. For example, we need to start moving into more public transport, parking management, and so on. All these projects have been taken up by Chennai, and I'm sure other cities are also doing
it. Thank you very much. For Professor Rajan, since this is a very excited and very emotional topic, so there are some questions. One is that, what are the measures to be taken by the government for migrants, and what is the level of government assistance? Then about the recent changes in labor law, how this is going to affect migration, and what are what you perceive as the future of migration in this country. I think the questions are very, very long, so please try to be brief, and so far as it is possible to answer the question, because all are almost one topic of discussion.
Yeah, I think I'll take very little time, because I think main thing I should talk about migration is that, first of all, we should count them, because that is one of the reasons we have failed. Nobody knew how many trains you need. I was talking about 140 million migrants today, migrant interstate and inter-district. We are not allowed the people to move between district. How many buses required? We have seen in the railway station and bus station. I think we have failed. I think we should count them. There should be some mechanism to count them. So I was suggesting what is called like your MasterCard, you have a credit card, we should have a smart migration card. They can sweep it when they leave so that we know where they are going. So that's something we should think about, counting them properly. Once you count them, then probably you can make policies. The second point is that I think, that laws of 8 hours to 12 hours and some government telling we will not allow our migrants to move and other thing, you cannot stop migrant. Migration is our birthright. I am a migrant from Tamil Nadu. I am sitting in Kerala and talking about Kerala migration. And there is nobody from Kerala can talk about Kerala migration. So I think, so I am sitting in Kerala. And look at our Prime Minister. He was doing very well as a Chief Minister in Gujarat. He took a new job as a Prime Minister, moved to Delhi. So it benefits all of us. Why should allow the poor migrant not to move? I think it benefits me. It benefits our Prime Minister. It benefits all of you. Why should we allow the poor migrant who want to earn little extra money? No, we should not stop them. And second thing is, for the migrants, we were talking between life and death during the COVID 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. But the migrant, they have seen many fevers. What is this corona fever? One old man I talked to him, he said, I have seen hundreds of fevers, sir. What is this corona? I am not going to die. For him, it is not between life and death. For him, it is between life and livelihood. For him, corona is not important. Livelihood. He has to make money, send back home. There are 4 people depending on him in the states of origin. UP, Rajasthan, Bihar. He is sacrificing his life. So for him, life is not important. Livelihood is important. For people like us, wearing mask, for us, life is important. For the poor, I think livelihood is important. And finally, whenever you make change law, 12 hours, 14 hours, I think please remember, in this country, migrants die earlier than non-migrants. Migrants die earlier than non-migrants, especially the poor migrants, not people like you and me. Poor migrants die earlier than non-migrants. So whatever, anyway, they are going to die early, you make more laws so that they will die a little early. So I think we have to think about, they are sacrificing for the country, for their family. They are fighting war. They are fighting war against what? I told you, poverty, nutrition. They are not fighting against any country.
So thank you very much. I think I will just take 2-3 minutes before I request Professor Mangaleshwaran to take the floor for the concluding remarks. I will just take 2 minutes. That is, one is that we have this very good presentation from the panelists. Dr. Shomadeep made the summarize the all problems related to the local bodies and which are this continuing since last 20 years. So we are in the same phase. Very few cities, very few local bodies have made remarkable progress, noticeable progress related to this thing. The same thing continues for the resources, for the financial thing, for the capacity building. So all these things we are just getting repeated again and again. But what and then of course this the other panelists, this MS Jayaprakash focused on the financial aspect of the thing, and we had very good presentation related to the smart cities and its problem from Mr. Cherubal. And then Professor Rajan is very, very passionate about the migrants, and also he is just not for this lockdown, that livelihood is important. But of course, a little question remains, that is that if today I think the whole death is India is around 10,000, around 10,000. I think the today's death. Now, had the lockdown not been there, if that death was 10 lakh, I don't know what would have been the reactions of us. And within that 10 lakhs, I don't know how many of them were migrants, because he says, the professor says that migrants die early than us. So, of course, this is a big thing that one has to take into account. But what is that? What we are talking about this about that the role of the municipalities related to the handling to the COVID-19. Even with all the difficulties, even with all the problems that we have, there may be some little measures which the municipalities can do even now with the limitations. Like some of the examples were that the in UP the panchayats were supplying soaps at the hand pump area. Very small solutions, but I think those solutions are quite effective within the capacity of the municipality. Capacity building is a long-term thing, but within that, what we can do, one is that yes, supply small things to prevent this, and then to generate awareness. I think because we have lots of digital platforms, many municipalities, including the village people, have their mobile phone, if not anything. So if we could arrange something in spreading awareness, till now there are we find that there are lots of lack of awareness, which creates lots of fear about how to handle the COVID-19 patients regularly, particularly. And the supply of food, very important to supply for the migrants. We already have a platform of midday meal. I don't know if you could arrange that, if you could coordinate with those infrastructures which we already had for supplying food, so supplying the state agencies, because we have surplus food, we have surplus crops. We know that we have seen in the TV that how the milk was wasted. So whether we could generate, we could make some of the arrangements, some of the coordination with the existing agencies, with the help of NGOs, with the help of local prominent people, with the help of the councillors mainly, how to handle these things. Now we have lots of problems like flood control and the drought management, all these things we have, but we have not developed that institutional mechanism that how to deal with this crisis. The pandemic is not the new one. Maybe it is a very crucial one, it's very severe one, but we have managed that, and always there is this firefighting thing related to the how to manage. But my humble submission is that we have whatever we have already, we can manage a little bit more, especially to the to reduce the plight of the migrants. It is that central government is one, the state government, the whatever subject of the migrants is related to the state government. So the state government's activity and the including the local bodies in Delhi, we already find that the reverse migration has already started. Because of the some of the employers are very compassionate. They could foresee that, they could maintain their migrant labor, they could help them financially and all other. So the reverse migration has already started, and the CMI data also says that in May the employment percentage has increased. In June it has increased a lot. So and these are the things that we have to be very careful. We can do, I mean, in spite of despair, we may have some hope if we still do the right coordination among the right institutes. Now, since there is not much time left, I request Professor Mangalasharan to take the floor for the concluding remark.
Before that, Simi, Mehta want to just give some few observation. Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Actually, these are not observations. I think one question has come up which ma'am must have missed. This is perhaps for Bharathy ma'am and Mr. Raj, as to how Bangalore and Chennai have fared in terms of being able to include the ULBs and its elected representatives in ensuring proper service delivery. For example, distributing food rations, ensuring proper migrant mobility, etc. So here, if Bharathy ma'am could provide a civil society perspective, and sir as an administrator, his perspective.
So Simi, in Bangalore, what has happened is Bangalore is generally known for a very active citizenship. So we've had a lot of people, a lot of RWAs, resident welfare associations, and individuals and these NGOs gearing up. In fact, not only humans, we've had surplus of food, which is actually in some places like Whitefield has been thrown out because that much food was gathered. So more compared to more from the department or the government, I think the civil society has actually contributed. So if you see each RWA, that is Resident Welfare Association, that is each apartment, each complex has actually taken 400, 500 rupees from each of the person, and they have put in the ration in a bag. and they have sent. Some of us actually, instead of giving the ration, we've given them the money so that, Google Pay or whatever, that would help. The third thing is, in comparison, BBMP has actually, that is the Bangalore municipality, has a cell dedicated for COVID, where they are actually measuring and also doing a predictive modeling of how much we would reach if we were to contain these zones. So initially, lot of zones were on containment. In fact, the place I stay in also was a red area. It was not a containment zone, but just one case somewhere in some apartment, the entire place was locked down. So Bangalore is fairly and doing really well in terms of COVID numbers. And the civils, I mean, even people are actually coming out and helping the people. So, for example, those people who are, going on the public, if people don't have masks, that have been provided. So it's like, for example, Janagraha has started a campaign as Mask It Bangalore. More than 100 people have come out to donate 50 or 100 masks at your own cost. And this is given to the migrant workers or the resident workers. Not only is it providing the labor to the, providing employment to the lower strata or like the tailors, as I gave you an example, it is also helping. So a lot of people have opened their kitchen. For example, Wipro had opened its entire kitchen and served more than few lakhs of food during the COVID time. So I think in Bangalore, whether it comes to food or whether it comes to taking care of people, even pets, actually the street dogs have been taken care of by 150 volunteers going around with the passes and feeding them, because suddenly in the lockdown, the dogs or the cats did not know that they were not getting food. Suddenly everything was shut down. So to that extent, the awareness in Bangalore is there. So that has really helped during this lockdown time.
With respect to Chennai, I think the general observation I've had about Indian cities in general is, I think some cities, especially Chennai, I can speak for it, is very much better at dealing with a crisis than many other cities, which does on daily governance. So daily governance is a problem. And I think the whole seminar was about daily governance and how do we get better. But it's pretty heartwarming to see the machinery actually work under very, very difficult conditions. Earlier, we had the floods, then we had the cyclones, unbelievable damage done to the city. And now, of course, the lockdown and the pandemic. It's pretty impressive to watch the machinery actually work, and machinery also cooperating with, as the earlier speaker said, from Bangalore, cooperating with the civil society. So whether it is setting up food and stay places for migrants, whether it is quarantining of areas, and so on and so forth, n number of things that's getting done every day. It's a struggle because unlike in many other advanced cities, data sometimes have to be done ad hoc, on the go. Many apps and system of collecting data, processing, analysis, etc., has to be done on the go. But it's been pretty impressive to watch machinery function the way it has functioned. But I think we can only learn. And one thing I can tell you, I can see that Chennai seemed to have clearly learned from earlier disasters, whether it's the flood or the cyclones. You can watch the machinery, how it's able to coordinate among the zones of the wards, how it's able to talk to the residents. Somebody quickly seemed to have the list of residents. Somebody seemed to have quick list of all the hospitals. They're able to call the right people within few minutes. They're able to get to the right people. It's pretty impressive. I know it could be better, obviously. And same thing here with respect to dogs and cats. A lot of NGOs, especially Blue Cross and all, have stepped in. I think they had 400, 500 volunteers across the city. I mean, it's pretty impressive. It's much better than what I initially expected. But like I always say, we have a long, long way to go. So we cannot afford to relax and be relaxing at all. A long way to go. But still, I must say the frontline workers, from the commissioner on to the zonal people, to the engineers, the people collecting garbage, etc. When all of us are sitting at home, not enjoying, but obviously panicking and under stress, imagine their situation when they actually have to go on the road, fully knowing that they could be exposing themselves to COVID, corona, and so on. Still turning up to work. In fact, I go to work once in a while, and I can see that they turn up, they work under stress, they work under limited resources, because they just don't have a choice. It's not like they can take a break and sit at home. But the good news is it's clearly the system is learning about the disasters. I only wish that we will also learn about daily governance from the past, present, from others, and from our own experience. Thanks.
Yes, Professor Mangalashan, because there was one question, but I don't think that can be taken here. That is
Okay.
what is the future course of youth unemployment? But I don't think we can take that questions here. Simi, you can ask the questions to put to the panelists later on, and if you can get into any kind of mechanism to answer that question later on. But now, yes, Professor Mangaleshwaran.
Yeah, thank you, Shipra, Mitra, Professor, for just chairing this panel discussion. So it has really covered a 360-degree approach on the rethinking the city governance. So because it's a need of the hour, where we try to talk about the migrant laborers, how the governance that we are going to take up. So of course, this is with this limited time of 1 hour. So it is not able to give much wide range of idea, but the speakers have really done a wonderful job by consolidating their views on different ways how we are going to take up the city governance in the future. Because especially, I should say that we have to rethink, assume, or reallocate, or try to redesignate certain various things how we are going to take about during the COVID-19 situation. Because as many of the speaker has rightly pointed out, the disaster is not a new to our country. So disaster has been taking place from the time immemorial. And there has been several disaster, because even the disaster that has taken place before this technological development. Of course, now we have a lot of technological development that has taken place, but however, we are able to manage our situation. So think of the days where these technologies are not there. So in that situation also we were able to manage the disaster. So that is the thing, how we have managed, as Professor Idaraj was mentioning, that the pathetic situation of the migrant laborers, right? So the civil, city governance, as you said, Chhatrapati, the see if I'm correct, I'm just in pronouncing the Saudi, Professor, kindly pardon me, because so you're from the West Bengal, so the term is might be difficult. And rightly pointed out the 18 functions, right? You have really given 18 different functions, how we are going to control over this 18 functions. So that is a very important thing, the kind of the smart guidelines. You just focus on the smart guidelines, how the smart guidelines is going to have it. And you also mainly touched upon the no regular election. Even in Tamil Nadu also, I would say that there is no ward election or a city corporation election. Of course, we have the village panchayat election, but when it comes to, as the topic is related to city governance, so far we are not able to have an election in Tamil Nadu. But that is an unfortunate thing. But of course, this due to the COVID-19, the election is not, we are not able to have the election. And the participatory avenues, the engagement, the citizen participation is very important, as you rightly said. So during this COVID-19, the citizen participant is very important for the outbreak management. So the outbreak management is very vital for this during this COVID-19. And that was given by Saudip and Bharathy. Jayaprakash, as a civil citizen, he has very well spoke about the world level, the ward level participation, how the world level participation, how the residents are able to do. And one important thing she touched upon is the psychological counseling. Being a social worker, I would say that rather than being a ward counselor, you need to be a more of psychological counselor too, because that is very vital today, because many people are suffering out of poverty due to the COVID situation, and financial thing, emotional, they are disturbed due to all those things. Therefore, I would say that even we had a program on mental health. We said that we talk about first aid, no, first aid for people who met with accident, and all those things. But one thing I would like to say is that we need to have the psychological first aid also. The psychological first aid is also very vital. We have to take it as, because the Bharathy Jayaprakash, because he, I mean, rightly pointed out the psychological counseling and how we are going to take about the issues. And Raj Sharab and really given the very need for the decentralization, because that's very skeptical issue that we are going to take toward the, I mean, how the quality of life that we are going to look at, because now the, you know, the Chennai is facing a very I mean, what's a very, I mean, now even the lockdown, but the number of the COVID is 19, because it is not that we cannot change geographically, you know that. I think Prof. Siddharaj can accept my statement, because the geographically our situation is like that. So naturally social distancing is a very big issue. So because of the geographical issue, because that how the Chennai going to be, I mean, the governance, because the social distancing we talk about, and we have to change the behavior of ours, how we are going to change a kind of behavior in a context of this COVID-19, because we have certain pattern of behavior, right? So how we are going to change the quality of life of the people in terms of the COVID-19, how we are going to bring about the change, the structural problem. So learning from the different cities, as you was just mentioning, that transportation, flyover, all those things are need of the hour. But of course, that is that we need to have a master plan, right? So the master plan is very essential in the city governance. And the emotional speech, because of Professor Giriraj, because he has been with us for, I mean, for the, I mean, past, I mean, last 8, I hope that if you remember, I'm correct, Professor Giriraj was with us for senior citizen among the COVID situation, and he was a resource person, and happy that the second time Professor Giriraj has joined us with this emotional, and he has really touched upon the issues related to the migrant, because the very catchy word, though it is I feel it very difficult, but the catchy word is, it is not a life and death, it is a life and livelihood that matters. So that is the very key word which all the people has to say. It is not only the, because I had some kind of different opinion. Of course government need to look into the welfare and other activities. Of course, that is, as said, the government has sanctioned 20 lakhs crores of rupees for the well-being. Of course, the meager amount is being allotted to the migrant, but it is also the duties of the corporates also, because the corporate and also has to look into this matter of migrant, because many migrant laborers are not only not being a government employees, but they are employees of different corporate sectors, L&T or some other companies, and they should also look into the particular aspect of their wages, salary, because almost they are become penury. So no money with them, because that itself, the financial crisis will definitely create a suicide thoughts. The suicidal thoughts is very much with the migrant laborers. Even we had, I mean, working with the street vendors, because that is also migrant, because the migrant where the villagers, they come to the city for selling certain vegetables, groceries, all those things. But even those people, they find it difficult to move around the cities because of the police and other administrative reasons. And because that's a difficult situation where how we are going to address the migrant issue, what is the packages for the migrants. So that is because I said there is no food security, health security, economic security, so as rightly pointed out by Iridera. So that is has to be taken care by the corporates, not only by the government and corporate. So I'm happy that the Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies Impact and Policy Research has really collaborated with the Bharathidasan University, Tiruchirappalli, for taking up this seminar on rethinking the city governance amid the COVID-19, with special reference to the migration. And perhaps we would see that there will be a lot of programs. We look forward for a lot of researchers, and of course, what is the thing is we need more of action-oriented research. It is not a research for just a matter of publication. I would say that it should be for a policy making, and we are happy to collaborate with you in future also. I thank Professor Misra, Maitra, Shipra for chairing and trying to she is able to manage the time. That is very important for a chairperson to do so, and within the 5 minutes everyone were able to make their presentation in a very effective and very in a very so it's a very that's a, what to say, it's a very in fact this program has really given some kind of take home messages. I would say that some take home messages to all the people, because I would see that 201 participants are taking part in this. And why my request to all the participants is that, so take these messages to each and every part of your places and try to implement some kind of things, because you said when Bharathy Jayaprakash was just telling mask distribution, food, handling of food, all those things. So whatever the best we can do, right? So because we social work department try to do with some kind of the counseling, community work, all those things have been done. As an economic, we can just do things. So different people now has to come together for the betterment of the city governance and for the migrant labor. So with these few words, once again, I thank the IMPR and the Professor Irderaj, Soumi Sadapi, and Bharathy Jayaprakash and Simi Mehta for giving a wonderful chance. And also I should thank Dr. Rajavel, who has been a person behind this, who has made really arrangements for this particular program. So it's over to Dr. Rajavel for his formal vote of thanks. So before that, Simi Mehta, you would like to give any comments or okay, fine. So anything, okay, so I can, it's over to Dr. Rajavel for the concluding, for the final word of thanks. Thank you.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah, audible.
Okay, thank you. Very good evening to all. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for our 8th webinar program, Rethinking City Governance Amid COVID-19, with special reference to the migrant labor crisis, jointly organized with IMPRI, that is Impact on Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, and our Department of Social Work, Bharathidasan University, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. Let me express my gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor P. Manishankar, and Professor Gopinath Kanapati, Registrar of our university, for their support and motivation. I'm grateful to express my gratitude on behalf of Bharathidasan University, so Department of Social Work, and IMPRI for Chairperson, Professor Shipra Maitra, Delhi Chair Professor, Institute of Human Development, for your valuable time spent for the fruitful discussion and intellectual knowledge sharing session handled with us. Thank you, Madam. I thank this opportunity to thank panelist Ms. Bharathy Jayaprakash, Chief Financial Controller of Esyasoft Technology Private Limited, for sharing her work experience and field reality, how they reach the needy peoples during the COVID-19. We offer our sincere thanks to Mr. Raj Cherubal, CEO of Chennai Smart City Limited, Chennai, Tamil Nadu, for his sharing of solid waste management and urban problems and smart cities, and how it was developed, and water bodies, how they are developing these things, sharing with us. Thank you, sir. I bow my head and gratitude to Professor Irderajan, Professor, Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, Kerala, for his wonderful speech about the migrant peoples during the lockdown, how they are affected, poor and middle class, where how much they will affected with emotionally. He shared his views, and finally he was told about the importance of life and livelihood very wonderfully. Thank you, sir. We are very happy to mention our obligation, Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay, Senior Fellow, Impact and Policy Research Institute, and Associate Professor of Bharathy University, West Bengal. He wonderfully shared with his 74th Amendment and ULB functions. ULB functions. Thank you, sir. We express our gratefulness to Dr. Arjun Kumar, Director, IMPRI, New Delhi. He is a good friend of me. The program is come to true with his support. Thank you, Dr. Arjun Kumar. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO, Editorial Director, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, for her tireless effort and support of the program, the success. She shows the panelists and cover all the area of related to our topic, that is 360 degrees. Thank you, Simi, Dr. Simi Mehta. I am happy to declare thankfulness to Professor R. Mangaleswaran, Professor and Head, Department of Social Work, Bharathidasan University, Trichy, for his wonderful concluding remarks and sharing about his view in this related to this topic. Permit me to mention our appreciation to Professor P. Ilango, Department of Social Work, and syndicate member, Bharathidasan University. I extended my thankfulness to Dr. Jevo Jeridan Elju and Dr. D. Nirmala, Assistant Professors of our department, for their support and encouragement. I would like to thank a moment to acknowledge the immense contribution to our guest faculty, Dr. R. Selvamani and Mr. John Milton, PhD scholar, and Leonie and Pugal Jodi. And I extended my thanks to Dr. Suresh Kumar and Dr. Karthikeyan of our departments. I express my sincere thanks to all the IMPRI staffs and faculties behind this program. Finally, I solicit your continued support and encouragement. Thank you once again to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajavel. Thank you, Dr. Mangaleswaran, for partnering with us for this very important web policy talk.
Yeah.
Lastly, I would just request Mr. Raj and Ritika to switch on their videos so that I can take a post-event screenshot, which can be compared to the group photograph in physical event.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If Mr. Raj Cherubal is there.
Raj Cherubal.
He's off, I think.
No, he's there. Yeah. You can just
But his video is not
turn on your
just-
video, sir, Raj, sir.
Just a sec.
Yeah.
I have to. This is the problem being at the home and walking around.
No issue. Just headshot is enough. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Raj looks very nice in the photo.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Because somebody said they are cutting their own hair now because there is no barber available. So.
I don't need any haircut.
You save.
Exactly.
Okay.
Pandemic has no effect on me.
Yeah.
At least my hair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you very
sir.
much for
Thank
joining.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's a
Thank
very
you.
entertaining.
Thank you. We
Very
meet.
stimulating
We'll
session.
definitely keep meeting. Simi Mehta.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks
We'll meet
very
you face to face after the COVID-19.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Certainly, sir.
We'll meet.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Professor.
you. Thanks, everybody.
Maitra, Madam.
Thank you, madam. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.